Did you know that we have over 500 planners from over 100 agencies with us virtually at Stratfest this year? Not only can you chat with your fellow strategists right here in the chat box, but please make sure to use the hashtag 4As Stratfest to keep the conversation going on social media. Let us know which points are really resonating and find new members of the community to follow. Our opportunity as strategists is to unite culture and commerce in order to attain real progress. And that brings us to our next presentation. Chris Konya of SYLVAIN will take that idea further and explore the potential of our plurality. By 2040, minority ethnicities will overtake the white majority, giving way to a truly plural society. In fact, we're already seeing our plurality enrich so many facets of popular culture. This is not just about ethnicity, but culture, gender norms, ableism, ideologies, and ways of thinking. How can brands nurture our plurality and innovate for it in a way that goes beyond talk and moves the world from the fringes to the masses forward? I'm pleased to welcome back to the Stratfest stage for a second year, Chris Konya, Principal and Managing Director at SYLVAIN, as she discusses how innovating from the fringes will be key to a brand's future success. Take it from here, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Konya, and today I want to talk about the potential in our plurality. Just a bit of background, I'm a principal at SYLVAIN. We're a strategy and design consultancy that focuses primarily in the worlds of brand and innovation. We work across categories with clients ranging from Google and Spotify to Diageo, Chanel, ESPN. And some of our more recent relevant work has helped MoMA push past the elitism of the art world in order to make modern art more relatable and welcoming for a breadth of New Yorkers. And also, we helped the WNBA reground themselves in their business model and mission, transforming their league into a beacon of culture and values for several marginalized communities. But today is not about us. I don't want to talk about SYLVAIN. I want to talk about us strategists. I want to talk about the questions that strategists wrestle with in 2021. I want to talk about the questions that haunt me as a strategist and ones that I imagine loom over any strategist really who understands their influence and considers the impact of their work. I want to start with the Islamic Golden Age. It may seem random, but it has some similarities to where we are now. So from 622 to about 1258 AD, Middle Eastern societies were flourishing, and they were flourishing at an influx of varied thinkers and cultures, all coming together to share ideas. Islamic scientific insights were translated into Persian, Arabic, Indian languages, Turkish, Armenian, and the whole movement, this whole movement toward cultural understanding, it was centered in Baghdad, but it spanned from Spain all the way to India. And during this time, Muslims, Jews, Christians, they were all free to mingle and exchange ideas. And as a result, in that time, those cultures saw great advancement in astronomy, medicine, physics, art, architecture, mathematics. They even invented modern algebra during this time. And so what we realize is that the key to all of that advancement really was openness. Openness is literally a lack of restriction. And when we think of it in this context, it's really a mindset of welcoming and sharing different perspectives. Make no mistake, openness leads to advancement. The mindset of openness ultimately dictates the real benefit of diversity in our day-to-day and in our society. And without openness, diversity really means nothing. Equally, the opposite of openness, insularity, has caused great societies across history to wither and collapse. So you think about the great Western societies. During the Great Vanishing, Aristotle and Epicurus's works, Plato's Academy, the Greek writings, they were all destroyed in a time that then ushered in the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages were this time of intellectual, economic, and cultural decline across all of Europe. And so what we see is that great openness leads to great advancement, and insularity leads to decline. But you don't really have to look so far back into ancient history to know that openness leads to advancement. More recently, the moon landing is an example of a great feat of humanity that was only made possible by a total of 400,000 people who worked across a myriad of fields, from astronauts to mission controllers, caterers, engineers, scientists, nurses, doctors, mathematicians, programmers, all different types of brains working together for a greater good and a common goal. And you look even closer at modern day hip hop, our largest category of pop music. It's made from an amalgam of different musical genres, all coming together. And even the field of scientific studies, the most highlighted cited works tend to be the ones that are rooted in traditional fields with just a smidge of insight taken from some unconventional place. And so whether it be neurological, cultural, or other, openness and exposure to different perspectives really drives growth. I love this quote from The Guardian. They said, "Living in a diverse society is like taking a daily run. It constantly challenges our social perception and keeps the mind fit, agile, and adaptive." But I don't really need to tell a group of strategists the virtues of openness. Openness is at the core of what we do and how we do. Every day we open ourselves to others and we understand and channel their feelings. It's at the root of what we do. But sometimes I find myself wondering, beyond empathy, how do I practice openness? Am I being truly open in my work? These are all natural things to be thinking about, I think, today. As a country, we're reaching our greatest levels of diversity now. So today, 1 in 6 Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ, and 1 in 4 adults have some kind of disability. And we're quickly advancing toward a year 2045 where our white majority will become a minority. And what's important to note is that this is not simply a majority to minority story. Instead of a new majority, we will become a country made up of multiple intersectional minorities. And while that may seem wild, the truth is that we've already become this multiplicity of shared culture. Actually, when we look at our culture and you look at what's happening around our country, in the South, Vietnamese Cajun food has already cropped up as a new culinary movement. Recently, Ariana Grande became the only artist in YouTube's top 10 who is a native English speaker. And weighted blankets, which are originally made for people on the spectrum, are now being sold at Costco in order to bring comfort to broader populations. So speaking of history and looking back again, and when we look back at America's roots, we've always espoused a philosophy of uniting disparate groups. In 1776, the US seal was declared e pluribus unum, out of many, one is what that means. It's a philosophy that's at the roots and the core of our democracy. And yet diversity is not openness. And when I stop and think about the topics and the writings of today, I have to wonder, is our diversity exploitative? Are we using that word and that concept for selfish reasons rather than for a common good? And am I complicit in perpetuating that exploitation? Even today, what seems like openness only confirms our dividedness, really. We preach body positivity, but magazines still publish stories on the best and worst beach bodies. We know that knowledge and expertise are primary predictors of performance and increase well beyond the years of 80 years old. But an HBR study shows that over 2/3 of companies consider older age a competitive disadvantage. And when given the opportunity, we can't even elect a woman president, despite scientific evidence that the female body physiologically enables more consistent wins under stress. And then turn the camera on ourselves, on our community of brand and communications marketers. And too often our tries at progress also are missing the mark. In fact, a lot of our well-intentioned work is seen as pandering and inauthentic. A McKinsey study showed that 53% of consumers think brands trust wash or aren't as committed to helping society as they claim. So, no doubt, we are in a time of social awakening, but making real progress is hard. I wonder how aware we are as strategists of our impact. How do we take seriously the role that we play in influencing culture? And are we really thinking through the repercussions of our work? When you start to think about that term, diversity, the word literally means variety or pulling together a range of different people. That sounds like a positive thing. But when you look at the etymology of the word, you start to see the terms that it comes from: contrariety, contradiction, disagreement, difference. And actually, when you really start to think about it, you realize that what we're looking for is not diversity in and of itself, but a plurality that comes out of openness to our diversity. Pluralism is a term that's been around for a while. It's not the sheer fact of diversity alone, but it's active engagement in that diversity. It's more than the mere tolerance of difference, but the welcoming and openness to it. Pluralism is all around us. It's in nature. It's in symbiosis. And when you look at different organisms working together and even depending on each other to live, you see pluralism. That mutualism between bees and flowers, clownfish and sea anemones, oxpecker and zebra is a plurality. Lizzo was talking about a plurality when she came out as body normative. She was saying, it's not just about acknowledging a range of body types, but about mainstreaming the ability to see a person beyond their bodies, so that we don't even need a body positivity movement anymore. She was talking about creating new norms. She was talking about bringing the fringe into a culture made by all. Jide Zeitlin of Tapestry was also talking about a plurality when he said that until every employee can come and really feel as though they can bring their true selves to the job, you're not unlocking the potential of your workforce. Not until every person feels that they can bring a photo of their significant other and put it on their desk, or practice their prayers in time, have we created a truly open culture. What we're talking about in a plurality is a new collective culture, not one that is made up of its core and its margins, but that redefines its entire culture through the diversity within it. I'm talking about creating a new culture altogether, one that is defined by all of us. So, how do we do that? How do we redefine our entire culture? I don't have the answer to that, but I do know that we have to question our culture in order to get there. And we have to ask ourselves, is this a shared, open, and pluralistic culture? Is the way that we use the term diversity exploitative? Are we contributing to an exploitative culture? Can we reach a shared plurality? How do we get there? So while I don't have answers, I have maybe a few starting points. If we were to create a shared culture, the first thing that we would need to do is to engage. We need to share, we need to open, we need to interact, listen, learn, hear, and be heard together. And so these are 3 ways that we can do that. First, realize that our audiences are about to become a diverse set of multiple minorities. This will be difficult. I've already received a few briefs like this. It will be harder to find one meaningful and resonant insight across our multiplicity. So in order to address these new audiences, we'll need to think more deeply about who we're speaking with. Who are they really? We'll need to be more careful not to accidentally come off as pandering or to perpetuate stereotypes. And one way to do this well is by bringing in and centering the marginalized perspectives into our work. So an MIT scientist had said, if you design for and with those who are the most marginalized, then you inevitably cover them and those who are in the majority. What he's basically saying is to design for and with the marginalized in order to design for our plurality. I think about this a lot. At SYLVAIN, we're 43% people of color and 60% people who identify as female. And while sometimes we can become a bit congratulatory about that, the real truth is that we have to continue to wonder to ourselves, what other marginalized voices do we need to bring in? Are we ableist? Are we neurologically diverse? How can we push further and center those marginalized perspectives in our work? One team who did this really well was a group who created the Nike Axo shoe. I think it's really tremendous what they did. The shoe was originally designed for people with cerebral palsy, no laces, no hands, but they did it so well that these shoes have broken into the mainstream and are sold and used by all. And so while this was kind of a happy accident, the next time you receive a brief, any brief, think to yourself, how can I center marginalized perspectives in this core perspective in order to create a solution for all? The second learning I'll highlight from today is that people are craving and already creating a shared culture. This multiplicity is already here culturally, and people want to interact and come together. So as strategists who are influencing cultural conversations, it's up to us really to push past existing conversations and become the creators of new conversations, to build brands that can become campfires for new groups to huddle and connect around, to create engagement, conversation, learning, and interaction that will become the foundation of our plurality. I love NFTs as an example of this. So NFTs have brought so many disparate groups together, people from the art world, people from finance, people who want to invest but don't know how to, people who choose cryptocurrencies, or just people who are curious. And you look at like the Bored Ape Yacht Club specifically, they've engaged their members in these many different ways by creating, they kind of have become a campfire that others have huddled around, right? They've created limited time merch drops, and Kennel Club NFTs, and online graffiti boards. And at this point, like NFT Twitter even has its own language. It's amazing the community that NFTs have created. And so the question comes out of this for us as strategists here is, how can we create campfires that connect new communities and create new conversations? The last point I'll make may seem contrarian, but it's really important to remember our individuality in all of this. Creating a collective culture doesn't mean losing our individuality. In fact, I think people will want to celebrate that individuality more and more as we become a shared culture. And when we do this, it will become important to be careful how we share that individuality, not to alienate or push others away with it, but to honor that difference together by making it relatable and making it shared. I love Black Girl Magic because while not everyone feels that they have Black Girl Magic, it's a concept that we can all get behind. These are women who are underdogs, fighting an industry of biases, creating a family of women, and inspiring others with products like She Can. They're making their individuality relatable and welcoming others into it. And so ask yourself, how can I honor difference by making it relatable to all? So in summary, we're at a critical juncture in our nation's progress, where our impending plurality has the potential to unlock great new progress in our country. And as brand stewards and influencers of culture, we have a responsibility to push for openness and angle against insularity. So ask yourself, in your work and in your organizations, how can I center marginalized perspectives in core perspectives? How can I create campfires that drive new connections? And how can I honor individuality through relatability? I'm Chris Konya. Thank you for listening. I guess we move to questions now.
Yeah. Hello there. Hi, this is Andrew, and I'm going to be asking some questions on behalf of the audience. The first one that we'll kind of start with here is, what has your personal experience been in pushing for plurality?
Yeah. So I will say that in the last year, the work that I do has really come into focus. So I'm a brand and innovation strategist. A lot of the work that I've done has been in creating new CPG products. And what I've come to realize is that when you exoticize a culture, you actually pull it apart and create difference more than you create commonality. And so what I realized was that some of the innovations that I had created in the past were actually pulling our country apart more than it was pulling us together. Even though, you know, the insight of the last 10 years was everybody wants to explore and discover, you need to do that in a way that actually pulls people together and doesn't alienate or exoticize different cultures. I think most recently I worked a project actually with a young strategist, a young Black strategist, who was still finding her way in terms of insight. And it was so amazing. There was a moment on the project where she broke the core insight on the project. And it was really about celebrating difference and celebrating similarity, and knowing that both of those two things happen in the world all the time, and that we can live in both of those worlds at the same time. And I think those kinds of insights and thinking around the nuances of how you honor the difference and how you make it relatable for others has been the key in terms of that kind of work for me.
It looks like we've got some cries for help here from other strategists. The question here with the most sort of upticks and likes is, how can we better reconcile the Strategist Conundrum to celebrate divergent openness and also the clarity of convergent focus? Big question.
Yeah, I feel that difficulty. Receiving briefs where, you know, I really don't appreciate it actually when I receive a brief where the audience is Latinx community, right? The Latinx by definition is a intersection of many, many different groups of people and different types of people. But we're going to receive those briefs. We're going to get them over and over again. We're going to get them more and more. I think it's going to be harder, and we're going to actually have to look closer at who we are. There are commonalities. I mean, we're all people. There are commonalities and there are strong resonant insights. I think it's just the temptation to do things that are pandering, the temptation to do things that that kind of boil us down to stereotypes is so great, especially when you have little time. But going deep is really the answer. You have to go deep and focus on a group that then can find where you can find a resonant insight that then spans across the entire group. It's not about watering down and finding an insight from the whole group. I think you can find a deep insight, a deep nugget within one of those groups, and then raise it to a place where it's actually relatable to all. We're all humans. Humanity is what it is because we're all together in it. So I think you can find it. It takes more work.
What are some of the ways that that you might suggest to combat the dangerous assumptions, right? Or some of those blind spots in the briefs that lead to pandering or even performative celebrations of diversity? Any tips there?
Yeah. It's a hard question. I don't have like the end all be all answer. I guess the thing that I will say is just that having teammates and partners who look at the work from different perspectives is invaluable. They will spot things that you wouldn't have spot. So having a diverse group of people that you're working with is going to be important. Then the next thing that's important is making sure that that whole group of people feels that they have the right and the ability to input and weigh in. You have to give them all a voice so that you do hear their perspectives and that you can work with them. And then the other thing that I will say is just that you really have to keep your eyes open. You can't take the shortcuts to kind of shallow insights within this area will come off badly. They will come off as though you are being self-serving. At the end of the day, if you start to think about the work from the angle of society and think about how you are impacting society, that is going to create the best work versus thinking about how do I market to a multicultural audience.
Here's an interesting one that we haven't necessarily touched on, the political or ideological sort of spectrum of diversity, which conservative viewpoints increasingly point to as the way that they're marginalized. At what point do we as strategists need to sort of heed the paradox of tolerance versus, tolerance of intolerance and that sort of thing? And again, another tricky another tricky question that the audience has for you.
Yeah. That's a tricky one. That one I cannot give you an answer on. Time will tell, and we will see. I mean, I guess the thing that I will say is, are you truly empathizing with all when you are asking those questions, and as you are thinking about the different groups? What are the advantages and disadvantages of all of those groups? And how are you ensuring that you are thinking holistically about the experience of everyone that you're thinking through? No one person knows the experience of everyone else. I think you really have to start to listen and feel what others are feeling in order to get there. I think this last year was an incredible lesson in that.
Absolutely. Do you think the public is seeing brands' efforts for more diversity as just another way to grow even more, and not for the actual cause itself? How would we be able to promote the plurality that you're talking about and get away from that response from the public and kind of avoid that cynicism?
Totally. Yeah, 53% of consumers think that we're trust washing. That's over half of the public thinks that the work that we're doing is inauthentic and just done for corporate greed. Well, I shouldn't put those words into people's mouths, but it is done for profit. And I think that's the core of what we're talking about today is when you receive a brief from a corporation and they ask you, we want to get the multicultural market, right? What are they actually, what are you going to do when they ask you that question? Is it really about profit and gain? Or can you turn that brief into a brief that is more about how do I redistribute power? How do I share insights and understanding? How do I create something that changes cultural dynamics and that influences the way that we all talk and share and understand each other? I think we often feel that we are, in service of the powers of our clients, but actually our clients are being held to these societal standards by consumers and by culture now. And so in service of those clients, actually, we have to service that culture and that society and what that society believes and what that society wants. And so even if they give you a brief that doesn't feel authentic or real and doesn't feel like it actually is for the good of all, it's our responsibility to turn it around and to help them because it's not going to go well for them. That is not going to go well.
Any tips on, there's the last question that we'll throw out here about getting clients to understand the business value in embracing all cultures and having these true meaningful representations at their agencies and within the work that they come out with?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Absolutely. I mean, corporations speak the word of numbers, right? Numbers are incredibly powerful. And just, I think so for us, as strategists, we pull numbers that represent society and what people believe and want. We pull numbers that represent populations the voting right of dollars. And we also pull I guess this is not a number, but we pull the cultural norms that are swaying our entire culture. These are things that our clients look to us for, and they see us as experts in. And so pull those numbers, tell them what the majorities are thinking and wanting. Those are the things, that's our power. That's what we use in order to convince them that actually what they need to do is to serve a greater good, because they want numbers. They want the large percentage, and that's what's coming for them. So have them listen.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has been incredibly insightful, and thank you for answering some of these questions. I'm going to throw it back to Elizabeth to keep on rolling. So thank you again, Chris.
Thanks so much.